Hi guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is going to be all about Maame. I am sharing my book review with you. This is a novel by Jessica George, and it is one that definitely has stayed with me after I read it. If it is one where the inner life of the main character, Maddie, is just all over the page, to the point where you feel like you're not just reading her story, but you are living it out in her mind with her as she goes. So before we dig into this review, I also just want to put up two reminders for you guys. There is still time for you to join my new book clubs that I'm kicking off in 2026. One book club is the first is my fictional book club called A Different Type of Book Club. And we are going to be talking about Yellowface, January 25th. You will not want to miss that conversation. So please make sure that you do what you need to do so you can join. The link will be in the show notes below. And in February, I'm kicking off my nonfiction book club called The Sojourn. And we are going to be doing a 10-week journey together through the Book of Alchemy, which I am really, really excited about. I got the journal too. To go with the book, and it's beautiful. So, again, the link to those things for you to sign up will be in the show notes below. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to this channel and share this with a bookish friend. Doing so just helps to make sure that our little corner of the book world and of the YouTube world continues to grow and grow in good ways, that we have the people who are book lovers, writers, and readers that are here in this space. Okay, so I am really excited to jump in to share my thoughts about Maame with you. Before I do so, I want to just kind of describe how I'm going to do that. So I did a video. I will link it maybe up there. If that doesn't work, you guys, that means I can figure it out. Grace upon grace upon grace. But I will definitely share it in the show notes below because I do know how to do that. So I did an update video for 2026, and one of the things that I shared in that video was how I wanted to think more deeply and specifically as I am reading through books, and in order to, number one, just kind of get to what I want to experience in books, like what do I want to be thinking about as I'm reading it, and it will help me in my sharing with you my review. So I'm going to be doing that for the first time using my kind of new system for the first time, which is really kind of topics that are guided by questions, things that I'm looking for as I'm reading through the book. I'm not going to break up and say and like move to the different topics. I feel like that would be a bit too jagged for me, at least for this one. I'm not. We'll see how it goes, and maybe you guys will want that so you can give me feedback. But I did want to share with you some topics that we're going to hit upon this year. And also, I want to say that you will be seeing me look down quite a bit because I am reading from my new reading journal, which I am loving, you guys, which I'm loving. So, my topics that I want to share with you guys, the first is around voice and consciousness, and then tension, so kind of around the conflicts, ideas and questions that it raises for me, craft choices, things that lingered from the book, and who I think this book is really for. And I think about that as like reader alignment. That part is like my recommendation. So I would love to know your thoughts about it, especially if you can leave them in the comments below as I'm trying it on. And without further ado, we're just going to jump right on in. Okay, so Jessica George is a British born writer. She grew up in London to a guy named Parents. And this book, this work is her debut novel. Impressed. Let me just say off the top, I am impressed, Jessica George. Thank you so much. I can tell you have worked hard on your craft, and thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what I think makes this book an enjoyable read for me by far is the interiority that she just puts so beautifully on this page. We are inside the mind of Maddie, who also is called Maame by her mother. And I love it that it asks a lot of questions. It puts a lot of things out there, and it's not all resolved at the end of it. Very much like, very much like real life. There's a line that is early on in this work that I want to share with you, and it says, "I'm learning that adulthood is mostly about unlearning the things you were praised for as a child." Whew, you guys, this quote right here, when I read it, I just underline it because I'm like, yes, yes. And it also is, I think, true for me as a child, but it also is a tutor for me as a parent to somehow not to allow my girls the space, right, that they need to spread their wings and to grow. I think this sentence quietly announces what the book is willing to explore: expectation, inheritance, and the slow and painful and necessary work of self definition, of becoming oneself. So, Maame follows Maddie, who's a young woman living in London, very vibrant London. And it, in and of itself, London, the city, is also a character. It's because London is crowded, it's chaotic in the best way, it's constantly moving, it's interruptions. And that's exactly, you guys, how Maddie's mind is. That's what we see. And pretty much, I think that's how a lot of our minds are. If people were able to get that like internal just readout of what we're thinking and how we're processing, it is very crowded thoughts. There are saturated feelings. There are highs and lows and extremes. And it's also disjointed. There are unfinished sentences and thoughts and lots of starts and stops. It is a place, her mind, that is never at rest, very much like the city of London is never really at rest. There is one point when Maddie says, London makes you feel like everyone else has somewhere important to be and you're just in the way. That feeling, I think, permeates this novel. Maddie is always adjusting herself to fit a rhythm that wasn't made for her in mind, or she doesn't feel like it was made for her mind. She's always feeling like she's in someone else's way. She's in her mother's way of like living the life that she wants to live with freedom and not much responsibility. She's in her brother's way by making him or desiring him to be more of a helpmate to her in the care for her father. She's in her roommate's way. She's in her friendship's way. She's in her coworker's way, but mainly she's in her own way. And I think that's the really important and interesting part of her journey and what we see. Um, since the release of Maame, this book has been praised for the immersive voice and emotional vulnerability and intelligence and rawness. I think just like rawness. I think readers have described it as unsettling in the most familiar way. Like, oh my gosh, I do that, I say that, I think like that. My interior monologue would be a very, similar interpretation because it's filled with all of her anxieties and doubts um, and insecurities that just are constantly bubbling up. Very much reading this book is like overhearing someone's private inner conversation. That's what it's like. And I think in doing so, there's just a wellspring of affection, at least for me, for Maddie as she's navigating all these spaces. She says that sometimes, and this is her describing a feeling for herself or of herself, she says, sometimes I wonder if everyone else received instructions for living that I somehow missed. Whew, I think this quote, yeah, this is my question. I know this was my parents' question. They would often say, when you were born, I didn't get a blueprint for you. And I'm repeating that. I repeat that with my kids. I did not get a blueprint for you. And I feel like no matter who you are or where you are or what season of life you're in, you can relate to this because you don't have instructions for it. I didn't have instructions for my 20s. I didn't have instructions for my 40s. It is life is about figuring it out. And I think that the thing that we see Maddie grapple with is the permission from both her family and others, and mainly, most importantly, the permission from herself to figure it out, to accept that there are no specific instructions and you have to figure it out. Um, what I love beautifully about this is that this is a novel that thinks on the page. Her mind is the narrative engine, and as we are seeing her figure it out, we are witnessing what that looks like from a thinking and feeling space. Her thoughts move very quickly. It loops between memory, text messages, Google searches, which, by the way, I love the Google searches. I love it. And I often was like, oh, this is like, again, she's going for it again. And it made me kind of like look at my own life and how quick I am and how much I rely on devices for answers and search engines than even human beings, and how I feel such certainty with the answers that they give back. Um, and how quickly I go to it, like just like a quick draw. I love that type of integration because I think it's just so real in how most of us are probably living our lives. And yeah, that was like a. I love that element. I love that element as far as a craft choice that Jessica employed. So when it comes to like tension and conflict and what drives the story, I think the overall driver of it is pressure. I think pressure. This is a character at this particular time of her life feels the pressure. And it's not just pressure that's distance or growing pressure. The pressure is pretty immediate. And we see that in different ways. So, one, she has a dad who's very sick and is in last stages. And there is a pressure of the temporal sense of life, I think, that she is living in. And because she is his primary caretaker, she's experiencing that in in great ways that she can't escape, right? It's right there for her. There's also like pressure of space, a physical space that she needs to have and desires to have as a young woman. And she goes through quite a bit of different experiences with physical space. I'm trying not to give things away, guys. It's actually, it's quite challenging, but there is a pressure to that. There's a pressure of connection, of kind of noticing the lonely parts socially, and the urgency and the need of connection and making real connection. There is a pressure at this season in her life where she's like, I need to get my shit together. I want to have a career, and the desire to really have that, but the pressure of what hasn't happened, or what hasn't happened in right ways that kind of will put her on a solid path. She's not on a solid path, and the pressure of knowing I'm not. And relationally, this desire of being with someone, it leading to marriage, the pressure of family. Her really, we hear this through her mother's expectation of, well, when are you going to be in a relationship? What does that look like? Trying to be set up. And somehow being tethered to someone being such a validating point to her as a woman and as her worth, and the pressure with all of that. So I think for me, if I had one word to boil it down, like what is the driving underneath fuel that's kind of girding all these tensions and how it's worked out, is pressure. And so yes, there's that the main, I think, tension that where we see this pressure most demonstrative is with the relationship with her mother. And even though they don't share a lot of scenes together, her mother's presence looms all over her life. And so she is a big presence, even though she doesn't take up a lot of physical space in the pages. And her mother is a very different woman than what Maddie herself is, and maybe what she might expect. There's lots of unknown spaces, lots of questions, lots of holes between them, and I think that that kind of aids to the pressure. And so there is a quote that I marked that I love, and it was in relationship to her mother. She says, Maddie says at one point, "I want her approval, but I don't want to become someone else to earn it." And I think that I thought when I read that, such a moment of maturity in that line, when she got to that point when she was like aware, I do want my mother's approval. It is important to me, but I don't want to have to change myself to become something, to live in a way to earn it. And wow, like that, like, isn't like that so real? Such a real thing. I think we could take out the mother and you could enter in anybody else's name, and you know what that feels like to have such a desire for approval, for acceptance, for belonging, but you don't want to have to compromise or negotiate aspects of yourself in order to do it. And yeah, so I just love that line. And this one I think is one that has stuck with me um, the most, like a real moment that I know I'll carry forward with me. Um, I think that this character, Maddie, this very responsible, reliable, dependable caretaker of a character, just really one of the things that we get to see is the way in which she cares for herself, which is not well. She has a lot of negative talk about herself. She doesn't know how to treat herself kindly. And I think that that's one of the things that I found very interesting. Someone who is so, I don't even know if she's good at being a caretaker. I think she's just has to be the caretaker. I don't know if she would say she was good at being a caretaker, but someone who is just so in the business, not technically, but just in the role of caretaker, she doesn't know how to take good care of herself. And that is an interesting part of her journey that I was like really drawn to and had to learn to pay attention to, because in the beginning it was more normal. We say these things about ourselves about, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm so lazy, or I'm so this, or I'm so that, but the frequency that it comes and in the context of what it comes was like, whoa, 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 no, 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 no. And I started wanting her to speak other truer words about herself, and it really just did make me, and it one of the things again that stuck with me is me being mindful about the words that I'm saying to myself, those kind of negative those kind of negative words. Um, so yeah, I think like for this book, like the things, there's so much that lingered with me when I read it, and one of the things that I wrote down are like, well, what questions is it stirring in me? And that's a good thing, because this book leaves you with questions that are unanswered. There are no conclusions really to these questions. But one of the questions that came to me, and it's really because of the season in life that I am in, is how much of myself do I give away in the name of being good or easy or dependable? And I have been kind of grappling with this question before I read Maame, and reading it just is like, oh, just is encouraging more for, it encourages me more to wrestle with it and to really kind of think about it. I'm thinking about this question in terms of boundaries, which I do not think Maame knew how to establish well for herself. Um, and so I think like each season and circumstance you're in, you have to kind of go back and tend your boundary lines and maybe make adjustments. Maybe, it's getting smaller. Maybe the boundaries need to be pushed out a little bit. Maybe the material needs to change. And so this question is a question that's helping me think through that personally. Another question is, how do we honor where we come from without letting it dictate where we are going or who we are allowed to become? And this question is really interesting because I think that sometimes there can be a wide distance between your origins, where you were born, to who you were born, the circumstances, and even their expectations. Because I think most parents, they see certain gifts or things in you, and then they have expectations. And the distance between that, or the relationship between that, and who you are able or allowed to become. This question was all about permission. And I really am thankful that this question came out of the book for me as a mother with three young girls. My oldest is 18, my youngest is 13. And I'm in a new journey, especially with my 18, where I am seeing her becoming. Like, she is in the world and I'm seeing her. And there are certain things I'm always trying to say, and I'm always trying to say, you're not just this, you can be this too, and. But to also not make my expectations so heavy and dominant, on her life, to stifle her own becoming. And I think we all want to do that for people who are parents, and yet I think sometimes we fail. So this book was like a warning to me at that point. Don't think that you're so good at it. Still work on it. Yeah, and be aware of it, because it can be a sneaky little thing, a very sneaky little thing. So I'm so grateful for that question too that came out of this book. Um, so yeah, who is this for? Who do I think this book is for? If you love voice-driven novels, I think you will love this novel. If you like to think deeply and feel intensely, sometimes like in exhaustingly ways that are demanding you to do both, but in a fun kind of, when I say fun, like it's has a good rhythm, vibrant, like this book cover, then I think you would like this book. I think that this is also a good book for people who are wanting to read what it's like to navigate cultural differences and expectations, for people who are interested in first generation stories and experiences, or complex family dynamics and issues of loneliness of early adulthood. I think that if you're interested in any of those topics, this would be a book that would interest you. So yes, make sure that you check it out. If you do want to check this book out, you can find it. I've linked my affiliate link to bookshop.org. That link supports independent bookstores as well as supporting the work on this channel. And so it's in the description below. But of course, you can also find this book in your public library and any store that you like to visit. So anywhere you like to find books, you will be able to find this book. And before I go, I want to share one more way that you can, that this book has stayed with me. If you'd like to read my letter to Maddie's dad, that's the character that I wanted to have like a continued conversation with, then you can do so. It is part of my series that I call Letters to Literature, and I'm going to link that letter along below so that you can read it if you want. So, Letters to Literature is where I write reflective letters to characters who they stay with me. We haven't finished after I have closed the book. They're characters who leave an emotional imprint on me, and the letter space is a space for my lingering, a space where I'm working out stuff in my present life, and that the book has kind of stirred up in me. And it's a space for me to say the things the book didn't say out loud, and also for me to honor the conversation that this story has started in me. So those are my letters to literature. I think I've done about maybe 5 of them thus far, but I will for sure be sharing in the description below the link to the letter that I wrote to Maddie's dad. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If this review has resonated with you, if you've enjoyed it, please be sure to like this video. And again, if you haven't done so already, don't leave without hitting that subscribe button. And also, I want to hear from you. What book has asked you questions that you're still carrying? What character maybe has done that for you? Please leave it in the show notes below. If you have read Maddie, I also would love to know your thoughts on this book. Did you find her voice in the intimate interior world? Did you find it compelling, or is that something that you were like you didn't like about it at all? So I would love to hear from you. Until next time, remember that reading is medicinal, writing is a witness, and books are the things that help us stay human. Bye.